Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Africam show. Oh, I'm so glad we're starting off here. It looks like we're at King's Camp and we have some elephants enjoying themselves. Oh, this is going to make my day so much better. Now, remember that we're live and interactive, so please send through those questions and those comments. Already, Zygote says hi, and so does Jack DeBoer from Chesapeake, joining us from across the world to enjoy this little window into African wildlife. I think, this is one of the cameras that I guess maybe doesn't get as much love from me as the other cameras do, or many of the other cameras do. But I love the positioning of it. It's so close to the water, so we can see the terrapins on this log here, or at least one terrapin. But oftentimes there's quite a few, and it's just so in line with the water level that you get amazing sounds when animals come through here. Yeah, I think there is somebody drinking quite close to us. So it's a breeding herd. Obviously, we can see youngsters. And this female that's right in the middle, right in front of us, you can see this little one walk right under her belly, but only just made it. When a little youngster is under a year old, it can easily pass under its mum's belly. This one, I think it might be going on 2 because it only just made it, definitely rubbed its back on mum's belly. But I was looking at her forehead. It's something that we tend to use when we're sexing elephants. Not my favorite way, as I've said to you before. But there you could really see a boxy forehead, which is quite different to what we see in adult male bulls. Problem is, it's hard to determine what's boxy and what's not if you don't have anything to compare it to. Also notice for the size of the animal, with the size of the females, their tusks tend to be smaller, not just size, but narrower compared to those of males of a similar size, even though a male of a similar size to an adult female still has a lot of growing to do. And here we go. April Owl is here and says, "Good morning, everybody from sunny Connecticut. Your cherry iced tea by your side and ready for the show. You and this cherry iced tea. I think I must try it." Casper's Dead Ghost says, "Happy Tuesday, everyone. Coffee and ready for the show." I actually am very good today. Just before the show started, well, I still have my tea. I've got a cup of Earl Grey, and I had a couple of biscuits before we started the show too. Chunk Truffle Shuffle, you say, "Morning, friends from St. Louis, Missouri. Cold morning, but ready with a nice cup of hot coffee." Amber Coe is also waving hello, and Kaoru says you can hear she can hear the red-billed buffalo weavers calling. Oh, isn't that lovely? Just be quiet so you can hear them. There we go. They have a very it sounds like somebody's trying to crank something and it's not quite working. It reminds me of, when you drive a very old car, a really old car, and you're trying to pump the clutch. That's what the sound of the buffalo weavers reminds me of. Dear NC, you say, "Good morning from Seattle. It's very early here after switching the clocks for daylight savings. You definitely need your cup of coffee. Well, go ahead and make it. Grab that cup of coffee and start your day with some elephants." Julian Thomas, you say, "Hi, everyone." Hi, Julian. Thank you for joining us. And thank all of you for coming along this afternoon. I must admit, it was a pretty down day for me. Lots of, the day where you have lots of little unrelated things that need to be sorted out. So you can't really just sit down and get stuck into something. It was one of those days. And apart from that, the weather has just been terrible over the last couple days here in Johannesburg. And I never realized how much I depend on the sun. It just changes life when the sun is shining. It just changes everything. So today was a bit of a rough day. So I'm really glad to have the Africam show to kind of close off the day with. I always feel tons better after I do the show, and I really mean that. And I hope that it's the same for all of you. Particularly when we spend time with elephants, but also the smaller things that we don't often get to see and not often get to see close up. So let's head to Olifant's River because I think we've got a really nice look at a crocodile. Oh, yes, we do. Oh, this is magnificent. Oh, let's start from the back. So start from the left of your screen, and you can see that armored skin and those protrusions in it. Those are called osteoderms, so they don't have scales in the way that other reptiles have scales. Well, I suppose that's a difficult thing to say because the scales come in all sorts of forms. For example, a chameleon, you wouldn't necessarily think they have scales because they look very skin-like, but they do have plates that are essentially scales, but they're just not to the same extent as you would see scales on a snake. And then if you compare the scales on a snake to what we're looking at now, that looks very different too. But essentially, all scales are keratin shields, little keratin shields. And that's what an osteoderm is too. But calling it an osteoderm is a more precise term for what we're seeing here on a crocodile's skin. So it basically means, so derm is skin, osteo is bone. So here we have bony protrusions that are literally in the skin. So not just keratin, which is what we see with scales, plain old scales. You can see the ones on its back are a lot more osteodermy than the ones on its side. And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. A lot of animals, whether we're talking about birds, reptiles, even fish, really, mammals, this underside, you can't see me, but I'm touching my belly. The underside of the body tends to be pretty soft and less armored. And it makes sense because that's the part of the body that is most often protected without even needing to consciously be protected. It's usually close to the ground. You can protect it simply by changing your position. You know, if you're a bird, you could just duck down. If you're a mammal and you're walking on your all fours, then you know it's already underneath you. Same with a reptile. So it doesn't necessarily need protection in the same way as the rest of the body does. And everything in nature, it looks for the path of least resistance. Now, sometimes the path of least resistance means that it goes off in some odd directions because there just isn't resistance in that direction. And all of those features that we see on an animal, those cost something. Venom is super costly to a snake. It takes a lot of effort to produce venom. So a body is always looking for ways it can cut costs. So not having this kind of armor on the underside is a way to cut costs. In fact, it's not as if it developed there and then was lost. It was just never developed there because it made no sense to develop a strong armor as you would on your back, on your belly. Then we move a lot more forward to the jaw. And yes, Mindy. Hi, Mindy. Thank you for being with us. I was just about to point that out too. So Mindy says you can see him breathing if you look really closely. So look at that area just below its jaw. So actually, Mindy, that's him gula fluttering. That's not him breathing. So breathing would be a lot slower than this. It's a large animal. It's going to be taking slower breaths. And you can see that it kind of goes very quickly sometimes. Now it's stopped. Let's see if he'll go at it again. We already know that he's very hot because he's got his mouth open. So those fleshy components of his mouth are getting a bit of a breeze coming through it, and that's going to help to cool down the blood vessels that are closest to it. And as the blood moves through the body, it will be cooler as well. So by him moving that little gula, which is kind of like your epiglottis, but we could never open our jaw this wide. But you could also kind of move your epiglottis, right? I'm now trying, but there you can create slight movements and it's just not going to do much for you. But with a jaw this big, it's going to help to create more surface area for that air to go over. It doesn't really create like it does create movement of air in that area, which is obviously more helpful, but it's not quite like a fan, you know. Oh, I think we might have lost him for a moment. He's so still, like you said, Mindy, like a statue. It's kind of hard to tell if we've lost. Oh, there we go. Are we back? There we go. But he is like a statue. So Zygote, you're asking, are there bones covered with skin? Um, kind of. The best way to describe an osteoderm, see, because when we think of bones, so Zygote is asking about the scales that we spoke about. Um, it's not a bone that's growing out of some of the skeleton. It's a bone that's growing within that little plate. So it's not connected to anything else. Each one of those little plates or scales have their own little bone that's growing inside of it, and then that is covered with skin, if that makes sense. I mean, it is that you also said, wow, those are bones. Yeah, it is. And it's kind of crazy. Can you imagine? I can think of many a place where this would be very helpful for us humans. On our knuckles, imagine if your skin was plated with bones in your knuckles, like in your skin there. Any joint, really. Your head, that would be an obvious one. Get double protection. But yeah, those are little bits of bone, which is crazy. You can also see all of its teeth, and hopefully we'll get back there in a moment. It's just that this camera keeps freezing, but we can't tell because he's so still. He really is like a statue. Eyes are closed. I think he's having a very chilled time, but I'd imagine that he is very, very hot. Anyway, we were talking about the teeth. You can see all of them here now. So I don't I don't know the exact length of the jaw, but it is pretty long because I can tell you that they have 64 to about 68 teeth in that mouth. So to accommodate all those teeth, that must be a pretty long jaw. Let's see if I count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 that I can see on one side of the jaw. So that already takes us to 60 because I just measured one quadrant, and I'm sure I'm missing some in between, but I'm sure he's missing some teeth in between too. So a lot of power here. They're often, I think they're not overlooked, but Nile crocodiles, maybe they are. We don't get to interact with them and go after them in the same way um as we do other animals. Like we find a lion sighting and everyone comes to that sighting. Nobody really finds a crocodile sighting and goes to that sighting. So in a way they are overlooked. But this is an apex predator. Nothing is going to go after a crocodile. Nothing. Kirst says that she can count 40 visible teeth. No ways, Kirst. I can count. But you're missing one quadrant of the jaw on the other side. But already at the bottom, I can count. There's a lot of these smaller teeth. So in the front, you can see probably about three, four, five to that big canine. And then between that one and the next big tooth, moving backwards on the bottom jaw, you can see there's quite a few little ones poking out there too. So they've got a lot of teeth in that mouth. All those teeth, coupled with a huge bite force. I've seen quotes of 3,000 psi. Well, basically nobody's really gotten to measure. Or it's a difficult thing to measure the bite force of any animal, really, especially one that you can't get into a lab to actually bite on something that measures that. So that's how bite force is measured. There's like a plate that measures force, and you get the animal to bite onto it. And that's how we can measure bite force. So with Nile crocodiles, I've seen some pretty crazy numbers. Generally, I come across 5,000 psi, so that's pounds per square inch. For comparison, a hyena is about 1,200, a hippo is about 1,800. If you think about your own bite force, that's probably about 150, like 150, not even comparable. So we've got these scales armoring your entire body, if you were a Nile crocodile, that is. You've got a huge mouth full of teeth, over at least 60 teeth. And you've got this massive bite force, a huge body that may be a little lumbering on land, but in the water, you are stealthy, you are quiet, and you are an ambush predator. They are absolutely formidable. So, Zygote, you are asking if crocodile teeth get replaced or fall off. They definitely do fall off. Um, and they do have replacement teeth that come up below the other ones. So remember we spoke about um, kind of movement. Crocodile teeth, they come up in the same way as ours do. So underneath these teeth, there is a replacement teeth sitting there and waiting to come out. Now, I've never heard and I've never seen a crocodile that was missing a bunch of teeth. A couple teeth here and there, a couple gaps, yeah, but never missing a bunch of teeth. Now, considering these are long-lived animals, I don't know how often they get replaced, but I have heard of a crocodile whose teeth, or at least a tooth, for the at least for the duration that was 6 times. But they don't have of eating like sharks do. They're eating much, but I'm gonna go now. Serenity, and this buffalo looks very, very injured. Ooh, for me, that's a lion. That's a lion outright. Look at the positioning of this. Sorry, we jumped very quickly from the crocodile to this buffalo, and we can continue the buffalo discussions in a bit, but we jumped here because we found this injured buffalo, and it's clearly quite recent. It doesn't look like it's the tail. Could it be the tail gone there? So if you're looking from the back of the buffalo, you can see that there's a bit of a hole there. It looks close to where the tail would be. And then just above it, there's a very big oozing wound. This must have happened last night or early this morning because it is still very, very oozing. Now, the reason I said lion straight away was because of the position. Now, if you've watched a lion hunt a lion hunt or lion pride hunt buffalo, you would know that. So we have some players, if we can call them that, of the pride that kind of run along the flanks, trying to chase and single out a buffalo and push them into other lions. And once that's been achieved, a buffalo has been singled out and is kind of cornered. The next move, because buffaloes are difficult to take down, they are tenacious, are big, and they have those two really big horns at the front of their heads. And they can create a lot of force with their heads. They're stocky, they're thick, they're like trying to take down a bulldozer. So once those lions come in and the buffalo has been singled out, the next problem is actually getting to take down that buffalo. How are you going to get close enough to actually kill it, to eat it? Sorry, I just noticed that is definitely a tail. Did you see the way it moved? Its tail is missing. So the lions want to avoid the front of the buffalo until this buffalo is completely subdued, because those horns will it can give lethal injuries to a lion, and I've seen it a couple of times. Puncture wounds through the chest, through the lungs, and the lion has a slow and painful death. It can absolutely toss a lion in the air, not a problem with that thick neck and its big head. So they're going to avoid that area. Then that leaves the back of the buffalo open. So once it's cornered, the first thing they want to do to try and subdue the buffalo, avoid the head and jump on the back. This is a typical injury that we would see on a buffalo once lions have tried to get it down. Oh, there we go. Very close up look at the tail. And that's actually its anus right there. And the tail is missing completely. Wow. Oh, this is a poor thing. This is so, so terrible. I feel so sorry for it. Look at the flies. Those are flies, right? I did not notice them at all from before. Whoa. Oh, it's a lot of a lot of empathy coming your way, Buffalo, from all the viewers. The fact that it's, other than that injury, it looks pretty good. I think bodes well for this Buffalo. The fact that there are flies in the wound also probably bodes well because there's going to be a lot of dead tissue there, and those maggots that the flies will most definitely lay in that area. It's probably going to clean it up nicely and hopefully does so without uh, leaving anything that can cause infection to the buffalo. Wow. Yeah, Kaoru, it really does look like it hurts. And Jack de Boer, I feel the same thing. I feel, oh, shame. What is very encouraging is that the lions got into the back, but it seems to be superficial. If there was an injury, so the whole point of the lions getting on the back is to get the spine, because it can kind of parallel and paralyze, maybe not completely. It's not like, the buffalo go limp, but it will get the spine and those nerves in that area enough to drag the buffalo down. And then there will be another lion that might another one might jump on the back, and then one would go for the neck and then mouth over the muzzle to kind of suffocate it. So here we're seeing no injury to the spine there. It's walking fine. It's managed to make its way to the water hole, which is what they tend to do when they're injured. They like to sit in some water. And really, if this buffalo gets the opportunity over the next couple days to just heal, I think it might be just fine. I mean, how many times have we seen buffaloes without tails, elephants without tails? My next big thought is we know that a tail, there's a slight limp there. We know that a tail is an extension of the spine. So apart from me researching the mechanisms of the crocodile teeth replacement and how many sets sit underneath the exposed set, I'm going to be thinking about how are tails different nerve-wise and blood supply-wise that allows so many animals to be I say perfectly fine, but be able to survive, a quarter of their spine essentially being chomped off. How does that work? Jen San, you're asking why the buffalo herd doesn't come to help. It's a really nice, I think this was one of the things that I learned quite early on, and I was a bit surprised about. When we think about family group, and herds are not just family groups, they're kind of extended family groups, and with buffalo herds, they could be in the thousands. Typically, a herd is a couple hundred. So they're not all family. It's kind of think of them as a community. And everyone needs to take care of themselves. So they're not going to help other individuals in their herd unless there is some kind of benefit to helping them. For example, if it is a calf and it's the mother and a dominant bull, then chasing or coming to help would be very, very helpful. It would be beneficial because you're saving this calf. If it is just another young male, a young bull that's hurt, it doesn't really benefit many others to put themselves in a position where they could lose their lives to save this individual. No, it's very I think the best way to explain it is to explain how herds form. So one of the most prominent theories on how herds form is called uh, the selfish herd theory. And that developed, or a herd in this theory, a herd develops by a single individual wanting to put somebody else between them and the predator. So imagine they're running along And if they can get ahead of another individual, there's someone between them and the predator. Then that individual who's in the middle, who's right next to the predator, they want to be ahead of someone else. So in that way, a herd forms and the animals stick together, not because they want to look out for one another, but because they don't want to be the only one. Because if they're the only one and they're the target of the predator, they're more likely to be taken down. Now, there are other benefits to being in a herd. More eyes, more ears, more noses to sense danger. But that's more of a happy advantage, a benefit of already being in this herd, which means you can place someone else between you and the predator. So just because we see animals in groups, and this applies to quite a few different species, in fact, to most species that live in a group, unless they live in a tight family unit where their parents and maybe several generations of offspring, unless they live in a unit like that, everyone is looking out for themselves. Even in the event that there is a family unit and a predator comes in and gets one of the family members, there might be some fight back. In fact, there definitely will be some fight back. But as soon as it becomes too risky, for example, if jackal pup gets taken by a lion, those jackal parents are going to be putting up a bit of a fight. But as soon as it becomes too risky, the jackal parents are going to stop. Because a young animal with no parents around is as good as dead in the wild. And those adults can still reproduce. So we don't see this kind of idea that we see with humans, mums saving and sacrificing themselves for their children, because animals just don't have that kind of community that would allow children to still, or youngsters to still live if their adults are gone, their parents are gone. I know it's a little bit not disheartening, but it's an interesting thing to think about. So we see groups and we kind of look at them through rose-colored glasses of everyone looking out for one another. But in fact, everyone is looking out for themselves. And that's really important when it comes to survival. Grumpy old man, exactly. You don't have to be faster than the bear, just faster than you. Exactly. And that's also why when we see herds, every individual in the herd doesn't necessarily have to detect danger for them to react. They can react. We see it often as a little panic because somebody stepped on a branch they didn't expect to step on, and they get a fright, and then everyone else gets a fright, and they run. Seen it with buffaloes. I see it with impalas all the time. And that's because they need to get ahead before somebody else. Because if they don't, if they stop to turn around and be like, hey, what was that? Was that really a risk? They're putting themselves in a position to be that one that everybody else is faster than. But again, being in a group does come with some fortunate benefits, but it may not be the reason that they stick together in the first place. I think the first encounter I had with this sort of react quickly or you're going to get caught, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to see the danger, is a very silly little story of me from, I think I was in grade 8. And we were playing like tag, essentially. But then we had groups. And I'm the type of person who wants to see. I like to collect as much information as possible. So when the other team comes running, or someone spots somebody of the other team running towards us and they start running, I need to look and see what are they running from? Who is this person? Who's running towards me? And a friend of mine said, "Don't look. If I say run, just run." And it was it was strange because it was kind of like following blindly. But in that game, it definitely helped me survive. I think this buffalo will be okay though. Generally, they can quite easily find their herd again. This male is not mm, doesn't look too old, but I didn't get a good look at its boss. You can tell it's a male from just that penis sheath hanging down there. And the horns go out quite a lot. But if we have um a good look at its boss, which is that front helmet-like structure, then I might be able to tell you a little bit more about whether this buffalo would join the herd or not. Because Jen-san, you're also asking what's going to happen to a buffalo in this situation. So if it is a younger male, um, actually, let me go the other way around. If this is an old male, that we sometimes call Daga boys, they tend to stay away from the herd or hang back from the herd anyway. They're the kind of the most dangerous buffaloes to encounter when you're walking in the bush because they can be very quiet, they can be on their own, and they just sit. They're kind of like an old man's club. Maybe there's a couple of them hanging out together and they don't move for anybody. They've definitely got an old man energy about them. Grumpy old man would tell you. They have a very old man, old boys club energy about them. So they can be quite dangerous because they're strong, they're big, they're reactive, and they don't care about anything. So if this is a Dagger boy, and I don't think he is, because Dagger boys tend to be to be full of scars and quite beat up from life. So if it was a Dagger boy, he wouldn't join the herd again because uh he's not really in the thick of the herd anymore. It's just kind of like he's a bit too slow to keep up, so he forms his own little bachelor group. But they still, might meet at a waterhole or something, but they're no longer dependent on the herd. Now, if this is a younger male, a non-Duggar boy male, then he is going to need to find the herd again. And luckily, herds are so large, like I said, a couple hundred, even some herds that get to over 1,000. Luckily, should be able to find them pretty easy. Set out trying to find them. Also, they leave a wonderful trail of dung as they move through, so they're pretty easy to find. The problem is that the same way or similar way I look for buffalo in the bush, and this male would look for his herd, is the same way that lions look for buffalo in the bush, following that scent. So he's going to have to be pretty careful to make sure he doesn't encounter these lions again. Zygo, did you say the boss is not battered? Thank you for that. Then I definitely don't think he's a Dagger boy. The other thing I noticed with Dagger boys, you see the ends, the legs that we're seeing here at the back. The skin tends to be pretty beat up and quite wrinkly and very patchy, and I'm not seeing that in this individual. I did see quite a bit of hair loss. You're right, Mindy. Um, but I don't know. It's not my first gut instinct for him to be a Dagger boy. Let's see if there's some patches around his face if he looks at us. Jen, you are so welcome. It's very interesting when we come across an animal like this who has really been through it. And you're left with all these little clues as to what could have happened. I find that so interesting. The oxpeckers are going to have a field day here. Lots of crusty blood. Like the ears are fairly tattered. Maybe just an older male, but not necessarily a Dagger boy. I'm also thinking about these flies. Flies can descend upon a wound pretty quickly, so maybe that's not an indication of it being instead of last night, the night before. Yeah. Ooh, do we have a red bulldog specker there? I mean, a yellow bull. There we go. Ooh. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Isn't that nice, everyone? I'm sure a lot of you appreciate that. Oh, two. Oh, this is so cool. So, most often we see red bulldog speckers, um, but seeing yellow-billed ones is just amazing. Somehow I feel that when it's sort of East Africa, we see more yellow-billed oxpeckers than we do here in Southern Africa. Ooh, getting right in there. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Gosh, do not pull. I just, ooh. Don't you guys tell me you didn't clench at that. You admitted everyone. Just, oh, that was terrible. Shame. Oh, oh, that. Mm-mm. Let's all appreciate that we don't have open wounds right now, in the middle of the bush. Whew. And all that movement still in that tail section after the loss of the tail. I wonder if there's kind of, when leaves fall, um, uh, during autumn, leaves have kind of what's called an abscission layer. And that's a particular layer of cells where it can dry up and the leaf can fall. And it's specifically made that way to reduce injury to the tree. And sort of reptiles, so things like smaller lizards that can drop their tails, they have a similar thing, this kind of abscission layer where those cells are easily severed and easily, or the tail is easily severed from that particular point and allows for quick healing. Now, I'm wondering, could mammal tails have something similar? I have never come across anything like that because the tail is well and truly on and no, it's not going to grow back. But I wonder if there could be some plane, some particular spot that causes least injury, maybe a weak spot in the tail, because there's little bleeding and there's so much movement. And if I'm being honest, there isn't, I can expect a lot more swelling. So something's telling me that either this buffalo is super lucky or there's something else going on here in mammal tails that I need to do more research on. Goodness me, this was a very, very interesting Africam show today, everyone. Mindy, you reckon you'd hang out in the water all day if you were him? I think I would too. I would absolutely. But can you imagine you hang out in the water and then the terrapins are going after this? Woo. I think actually, Mindy, I would hang out in the mud. I'd find a nice mud wallow and I'd hang out there, try to cover all my wounds, and wait till I pick up the scent of my herd on the breeze. And Julian, you said that's gotta hurt. Absolutely. Anyway, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. This has really been such an interesting episode. I didn't even realize that our time is up already. I really loved chatting about the crocodiles. Mindy, I did get your question about keeping their numbers in check, and we'll get to it next week. Mindy, I owe you a lot of answers, actually, but let's try and get through them next week. And thank you for your questions and your comments, everyone. It's really been such a cool episode. Keep watching the cameras, stay curious, and I'll see you all soon for Wild Moments on Thursday. Bye for now.